This looks like pure untouched wilderness, the greatest rainforest on the planet. But it is hiding one of the biggest secrets the green canopy has ever kept. Beneath these trees lie lost settlements, vanished millions, and a catastrophe whose effects may still be visible in the planet's climate record. For centuries, the dominant view was clear. The Amazon was empty, a pristine wilderness no great civilization could ever tame. The experts called it a counterfeit paradise, lush and green on top, but with soil too poor to ever feed a real city. The textbooks all agreed. Only small wandering tribes lived here. No kings, no cities, no roads, and no monuments. And it made a strange kind of sense. There were no stone ruins here, no pyramids of Egypt, no Roman walls to dig up. But way back in 1542, one lost Spaniard saw something very different drifting helplessly down the great river. His name was Orellana, and his friar wrote it all down, town after town, lining the riverbank for mile after mile. One town, he swore, stretched for 15 miles without a single gap. The land, he wrote, was as fertile as our Spain. Back in Europe, they laughed. A starving, lost soldier, surely hallucinating golden cities in a green and hostile hell. So his account was filed away in a dusty archive and forgotten for over 300 years. The myth had won. Centuries later, explorers still chased rumors of a lost city in the jungle. Some marched in and were never seen again. It did not help that Europeans were hunting El Dorado, a fantasy city of solid gold. So every real report of cities sounded like just another greedy fairy tale. Then, just a few years ago, everything changed. Scientists flew helicopters over the trees, firing millions of laser beams downward. Each beam measured the exact distance to the ground below, billions of tiny points, building a perfect map of the surface. Then the software did something magical. It digitally erased every single tree, leaving only the bare, hidden earth. And what was left underneath was not wild forest at all. It was covered in straight lines, sharp corners, and giant shapes. There it was, not wilderness, cities, pyramids, plazas, and avenues, buried beneath the green the whole time. After 5 centuries, modern archaeology suggests Orellana was far more accurate than the scholars who mocked him ever believed. And it was not only Orellana. Many indigenous communities had long known these forests held the traces of ancient settlements, even as Western science overlooked them. In Bolivia, they found the Casarabe culture, earthen pyramids 22 meters tall, rising straight out of the flat forest floor. These were not random mounds. They were engineered platforms and cone-shaped pyramids, ceremonial centers laid out by careful design. Around them ran canals and reservoirs, moving and storing water across the entire landscape all year round. And raised roads ran dead straight for kilometers, linking dozens of settlements into one single connected network. This was a brand new kind of city, not crowded and walled, but spread wide across the land like a vast green garden. And then, around 600 years ago, this whole engineered world was quietly abandoned and left to the trees. Then in Ecuador, the Upano Valley revealed one of the oldest and largest urban discoveries yet. Thousands of platforms and dug streets. It was built 2,500 years ago, as old as the great cities of ancient Greece, hidden in the rainforest. Wide avenues, drainage ditches, and farm fields. This was a true urban landscape, not just a clearing in the woods. Elsewhere, when forests were cleared, the bare ground revealed giant geometric earthworks, perfect circles and squares carved into the land. In the Xingu, they built garden towns ringed by walls and moats, their plazas carefully aligned to the rising sun and stars. Each town was joined to the next by roads, like a galaxy of villages all orbiting one central plaza. At the mouth of the river sat Marajo, an island bigger than Switzerland, where a mound-building society thrived for over 1,000 years. They left behind beautiful painted pottery and giant earthen mounds, raised homes for thousands of people, long before any European arrived. So this was no scattering of nomads. The evidence now points to complex societies, here millions of people strong. Estimates run as high as 8 to 10 million people, living across the basin when the very first Europeans arrived. They had farming, architecture, trade, religion, and engineering, all working together on a continental scale. Some towns were ringed by deep defensive ditches and tall wooden walls. And where there are walls, there are rulers, rivals, and real power. But wait, how do you feed millions of people on soil everyone said was worthless? Simple. They built better soil from scratch. They mixed charcoal, bone, and waste into the ground, slowly creating Te Preta, the famous Amazonian dark earth. This black soil is so rich it remains fertile today, centuries later. Farmers still prize these dark earths wherever they are found. And they did something even bigger. They reshaped the forest itself, planting useful trees everywhere that they lived. Brazil nut, cacao, and acai. Even today, these trees grow thickest right on top of the old abandoned settlements. So parts of today's wild forest are really an orchard, shaped and tended by human hands across countless generations. They even farmed the water itself. Across the flooded plains, they built long zigzag fish weirs to trap and harvest fish at a massive scale. And they managed river turtles by the thousand in nesting areas and holding pens, a living larder that fed them right through the dry season. So here is the haunting part. If millions of people lived here, advanced and organized, then where on earth did they all go? What could possibly erase an entire civilization so totally that the whole world forgot it had ever existed? The story turns in 1492, when Columbus reached the Americas. But the soldiers themselves were not the deadliest force. The deadliest force was invisible. Diseases such as smallpox, measles, and influenza, which indigenous peoples of the Americas had never previously encountered. For thousands of years, these two worlds had been completely separate. The people here had no prior immunity to any of it. To a population with no immunity, a single stranger's cough could become a death sentence for an entire town. And here is the cruelest twist of all. The diseases traveled far faster than most of the Europeans who carried them. They spread person to person, village to village, racing down the rivers and ancient trade roads into the deep interior. The sickness arrived years, sometimes whole decades, before any European face was ever actually seen. So when explorers finally pushed deep inland, they did not find great cities. They found only silence and crumbling ruins. And so they concluded the jungle had always been empty, never once realizing they had simply arrived far too late. Historians now call it the Great Dying. Across the Americas, perhaps 56 million people died, as many as 9 out of every 10 people. By many estimates, the largest population collapse in all of human history. Whole languages, religions, and cities vanished within a single lifetime, and almost without a single witness left to tell it. Picture a thriving town of several thousand. Within weeks or months, the fields stand empty, the cooking fires go cold, and the silence is total. And the survivors fled the dead villages, unknowingly carrying the sickness with them, spreading the collapse even faster into the very next valley. And the dying was so vast that it left a fingerprint on the entire planet's atmosphere. With the farmers gone, the forest surged back, reclaiming millions of abandoned fields and gardens across the basin. That explosion of new trees pulled so much carbon from the air that it likely helped cool the whole planet. Antarctic ice cores record the carbon dioxide dip, while tree rings preserve the cooling that followed. The collapse of many Amazonian societies can still be read in the ancient air, trapped deep inside polar ice. The carbon dip bottoms out right around the year 1610. Some scientists argue this is the true beginning of the human age, a proposed global marker for the moment these vanished societies left their trace in the very air we all now breathe. But why did we forget so completely? Why call this place pristine for 5 whole centuries? Because they did not build in stone. Their pyramids were made of earth, their great cities of wood and packed soil. And in the tropics, the jungle is relentless. In just a few decades, vines and roots can swallow almost anything. The few survivors scattered into small tribes, almost exactly the sparsely populated Amazon the Europeans had always expected to find. The evidence of millions was buried under a living green blanket, and a simple myth slowly hardened into solid fact. So the next time you picture the Amazon as untouched virgin wilderness, stop and remember this. That pristine forest is not quite untouched. It is a living forest, and in many places, both a garden and a graveyard grown over a lost world. The trees you see may be standing on plazas, on pyramids, and on the silent homes of millions of forgotten people. Civilizations do not always fall in fire and war, leaving proud monuments behind for us to admire. Sometimes they vanish so quietly and so completely that the world itself simply grows over them, and we walk through the ruins for centuries, calling it wilderness, never once knowing just how much we had lost.